Are we ready? Okay, I have 7 o'clock, so we are going to get this meeting underway. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the regular City Council meeting for May 21st for Minnetrista. So first order of business, I'd like to ask that you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So thank you all for joining us this evening, those of you that are here this evening and also those that may be watching later on YouTube. As is our tradition, I'll start out with introductions. I'm Lisa Whalen, I'm the mayor, and to my left we have council members Pam Mortenson, Mike Molitor. Absent this evening is Shannon Bruce, and then our new council member John Tschumperlin, and next to him we have our city engineer with WSB, Paul Hornby. Our city clerk is Kris Linquist, and the director of administration, Cassandra Tabor. And then to my right is city administrator Mike Barone, finance director Brian Grimm, Community Development Director David Abel, and with Kennedy and Graven, our legal consultant is Ron Batty, and then on the end we have our Chief of Police, Paul Falls. So are there any additions or changes to the agenda? Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion was made by Ms. Mortenson and seconded by Mr. Tschumperlin. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 4-0, and of course throughout the evening, one absent. So next we have special presentations.
Yes, Mayor, and I'm going to, in a second here, ask the Mayor to head down to the podium to read a resolution. From time to time in our city, we will recognize people that have made outstanding contributions not only to the city but for the community at large, and we have a person tonight that we're going to do that for. It's Pam Myers, former superintendent of schools here for the West Tonka School District and participant in the Historical Society in many roles for many years. So Lisa, if you want to go ahead and call up Pam. And Cassandra's going to snap a few pictures here. So.
Oh, welcome. Thank you. And yes, it's an honor and a privilege to have you as part of our community, even though you may not live in Minnetrista, but all of the exceptional things that you have done. And I have a resolution here, and after I read it, I'm going to ask the council to pass a motion, and then we're going to vote on it, and I'm sure we're all going to be in agreement. But this is whereas the city of Minnetrista, Minnesota wishes to honor and recognize Dr. Pamela Myers as a true friend of the city of Minnetrista and the overall Minnetrista community. And whereas Pam Myers came to work for the West Tonka School District in 1985 as the assistant principal at Graven School, where she was able to work with the Minnetrista Public Safety Department as part of her duties, and whereas Pam Myers went on to be the assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction in 1985, and then went on to be the West Tonka School superintendent from 95 through her retirement in 2002. And whereas Pam Myers, concurrent with her school district work, volunteered with the West Tonka Historical Society starting in the mid-1980s, and was the Historical Society board president from 2008 through 2018, and continues to volunteer despite handing over the presidential gavel earlier this year, in January of 2018, and with the Historical Society participating in every Trista Day ever held here in our city. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Minnetrista that the City Council recognizes Dr. Pamela Myers for her outstanding contributions towards the City of Minnetrista and the Minnetrista community overall. Do I have a motion to pass this resolution?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. And all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 4-0 and one absent, of course. So thank you very much, Ms. Myers, for all of your help, including, and this wasn't listed here, she has been one of our tour guides on our annual bus tour, hopefully again this year, and has also done the historical part of it, and a great asset for the tour
say I am not from our community. I moved here when I came to the school district, and I have so enjoyed being part of the community here. It's a wonderful place to live and work, and I feel privileged to have worked with you and with the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we have another special presentation, not as exciting. Okay, fine.
Come on now. Poor Michelle.
So, Mr. Grimm, would you like to start us off and introduce us?
Yeah, I'll introduce you. So we have two guests tonight from our auditing firm of Clifton Larson Allen, and actually one's a substitute because I think it was a valid reason that Mr. Hugavina would have been before the council. Yeah, it's a playoff match or something, right? Or, so, so it'll be Michelle Hoffman and then also Lance Lauinger are with Clifton Larson Allen, and they'll be here to present the results of our 2017 audit. And I thought from a staff perspective, everything went well, and I want to thank Don and Angie in our finance department for all their hard work, and as well as Clifton Larson Allen. And it went well, and I'll turn over to Michelle to talk about the results of the audit. So.
Thank you, Brian. And I will also echo Brian's thoughts, thanking the finance department, including Brian, of course, Don and Angie and everyone else. They mentioned the audit went very smoothly this year, and they definitely do a great job getting everything in order for us. And it probably will be more boring than the last one, but that's a good thing. Usually your audit report's boring, that's good. But as Brian mentioned, my name is Michelle Hoffman. I'm audit manager with Clifton Larson Allen, and we've been fortunate enough to work with the city for the last several years now. And it's been a great relationship. They've been immensely helpful in working with the audit, and definitely look forward to working hopefully more years in the future. But clicker. Excellent. So we're just going to go over some kind of summarized audit results for the year, just to kind of brief agenda here. Some required communications that we're required to communicate to the government. And then some summarized audit results as well as financial results. And just a couple other items that we would like to point out at the end. Alright, so required communications, we are required to make sure that you understand that audit provides reasonable but not absolute assurance. We don't pull every single transaction, every single item that comes to the city. Obviously that would just not be practical. So when we do give our audit opinion, we give reasonable but not absolute assurance over the financial statements that they are free from any material misstatement. We also would like you to be aware that there are some estimates that go into the financial statements of the city. Certainly things like useful life of capital assets, no one knows for sure how long some are going to last, so we have to kind of build some estimates in there. Things such as the valuation of investments that the city holds. And then some long-term liabilities, including the post-employment benefits liability, which is actuarially determined, but is an estimate, as well as any liability on the books for net pension obligations that will be going out, many years in the future. So kind of our long-term estimate based on certain things we know, certain things that we're estimating for the future. And I already mentioned that we're definitely thankful for all the help that management gave us during the audit, but we also want to point out that we did receive full cooperation from management. If for some reason there was any sort of disagreement we had, something that we weren't, anything like that, difficulties, we would have to, as part of audit standards, communicate that to you. So we are also then required to notify you that we did not have any, of course, disagreements or anything like that with management. So we did receive full cooperation with management, and they were more than helpful in completing the audit. All right. Too many. Okay. All right. So overall audit results that we definitely wanted to mention. We are issuing a modified or clean opinion on the financial statements. It is the best opinion that we can give. If for some reason we felt things were missing, things were not materially correct, we'd have to modify our opinion in some way, or even potentially disclaim it if we felt that we couldn't even audit it. So unmodified is the best we can give, and there's going to sound too glamorous, but we are giving an unmodified or clean opinion on the city's financial statements for 2017. In addition to looking at the actual numbers in the financial statements and putting together the financial statements, we do an assessment of the city's internal controls over financial reporting, making sure that there is segregation duties, proper reviews are in place, things like that. And we are happy to note that in our letter for internal controls, we are not going to be reporting any exceptions, meaning we didn't find anything that we felt rose to any sort of significant deficiency or material weakness that you should know about. So it's always great to hear because it's really not that uncommon to have items in the internal control letter. So we're definitely happy to report that we are not issuing any findings in the internal controls.
the state auditor issues an audit guide every year with a kind of comprehensive list of statutes that we're supposed to look at to make sure you're complying with those statutes. Anything from, bidding requirements to cash and investments, some miscellaneous provisions, debt, things like that. So there's various categories that we have to test against. And if for some reason something was missed with regards to those statutes, we would include it in our legal compliance letter. Happy again to note that we had no exceptions there, which is obviously a great thing as well. That is probably more common in intro controls to find some legal compliance items. I think last year we did have one item, which obviously the city has not addressed. So it's, again, very good to see no items there. And lastly, we're also issuing a management letter. And this is a letter we give to management where if there may not be any in-control items, but we just have sort of best practice suggestions. And so we did give 2 kind of best practice suggestions for things to consider in a management letter that we separately communicate to them. All right, starting with some overall financial results. So now we're looking at just the general fund here. And this is the unassigned fund balance at the end of the year. So there are several different categories of fund balance in the general fund. You could have, non-spendable, restricted, which would be an outside party, either state or someone would put a restriction on it. Committed would be something that you as a council would decide to earmark. Assigned would be another category that either you as the council or generally the finance director or city administrator could kind of again earmark. Then unassigned is sort of everything else, everything you have left over to just spend on general operations of the city. And one measure that we like to look at is what is your unassigned fund balance and what is it as a percentage of your budget operating expenditures for the next fiscal year. The city has a policy that you will keep an unassigned fund balance of 50% or greater, which is right around where we suggest, 45 to 50. Mostly because with the general fund, obviously you're very reliant on your tax revenue, and you get that basically twice a year. So the idea with the 50% is that if some, worst case scenario, you could fund your operating expenses until you get that kind of next tax flow in. So 50% is kind of right around what we recommend. And as you can see up there, the city ended just over 50%, I think actually about 54%. So right in that, well above the policy. And I know you can see a decrease there in 2015. Also included in the city's policy is that if it does get a little high, then there's obviously you might want to spend it down. So that was the plan to spend down, kind of bring it down to that 50%, but just keeping it above. So very solid numbers there. Here we have a graph showing the general fund revenue and sort of what it's made up of. As I mentioned, no surprise there that it really the general fund relies on that property tax revenue. It's definitely the bulk of the revenue. You can see there licenses and permits make up the next largest piece, with any intergovernmental grants, user fees, and then kind of other being the last few. I believe in 2015 that intergovernmental in red is a little bit higher as you got some FEMA money and it's also storm damage. So there are some grants there that came in that aren't typical, kind of a one-off there. Here we have the same graph for general fund expenditures. Again, you can see public safety now be our biggest expenditure for the general fund, with general government and public works being the other kind of blue categories, and then parks and rec and miscellaneous other. So public safety is about 54% of that, general government 24%, and then public works about 18%. And pretty steady over the years. The budget and actual is remain very steady as far as where you're spending your money. Very good results. Here we have the general fund comparison of revenues and expenditures, and then we're looking at our unassigned fund balance again. So you can kind of see where the revenues and expenditures have fallen over the last several years. So in 2017, we can see that. So the light blue one there is revenue, and the red being expenditures. The revenue is about 4.5 million, with expenditures being about 4.7 million. So you have slightly more expenditures than revenue. Factoring in some transfers in there, there was a slight decrease in fund balance, but again, a lot of that planned, of course. And actually, the actual results, you were planning to spend on even a slightly bit more of that fund balance. So actual, budget to actual was about 130,000, I think, better than budgeted. So the planned spend down was even quite as much as you had budgeted. So positive results there. Now I'll take a look at the enterprise funds. We really kind of only look at water, sewer, and stormwater, at least up here. We obviously are auditing the other 2 funds, but they're very small, so we tend to focus on these 3 funds. Those are definitely your biggest enterprise funds. So here we have your water, sewer, and stormwater, looking back over the last 5 years. Here we have our unrestricted, or what we kind of consider spendable net position. Here, similar to the unassigned. Of course, the water, sewer, and stormwater are kind of very capital intensive. They have a lot of infrastructure, things like that. So they do have a high net position, but a lot of it is tied up in that capital assets. which of course isn't really spendable. So it's a little more practical to look at the unrestricted piece, which is sort of the spendable or liquid net position. So here we're looking at our unrestricted spendable net position over the last 5 years for all three funds. All three of them did have slight increases this year. Water fund ended about $2.65 million, sewer fund about $1.5 million, and stormwater about $341,000 to end the year. In the water, that was about a $300,000 increase. Sewer fund about a $140,000 increase, and stormwater $3,000 increase. So all of them had positive increases in their unrestricted net positions this year. We'll take a look at just the water fund. Here we have our operating revenues and operating expenditures. Those are the kind of blue bars there, and you have lines going across to show what that translates for operating income. And we have two lines going across, one where we take depreciation expense into account, one where we don't. Depreciation, of course, isn't really kind of a cash item, so a lot of time, once you factor it in, you can end up with an operating loss, even though you'll get your cash flows might be positive cash flow. So we do want to show both, just to give you an idea of kind of where you're more, if you kind of go more cash flow, where you're ending up. Of course, the goal would be to ultimately cover the depreciation expense as well and have a positive operating income, but it's not uncommon for enterprise funds to, once you put the depreciation in, have sort of net operating loss. But as you can see here, this year the water fund was able to cover and actually have positive operating income even with the depreciation. And of course, when we take depreciation out, it looks even better. So definitely positive operating income there for the water fund. Sewer fund, when we add depreciation, did have a slight operating loss. But then when we take it out, you can see that would be a positive operating income. So depreciation expense did bring it down a bit. It was about $980,000 in revenue. $916,000 in revenue and $966,000 in expenses. So just slight increase or slight expenses over revenue there. Stormwater fund had about $295,000 in operating revenue and $332,000 in operating expense. So there again, operating loss, but when we do factor out that depreciation, which is a big driver of that, you end up with positive. And the other kind of big driver for the sewer and stormwater fund is there's a little higher repairs and maintenance expense this year too, which resulted in that operating loss. But as you know, operating losses aren't necessarily a bad thing, especially if when you take depreciation out, if you're ending with a positive, as long as you're keeping an eye on unrestricted net positions still staying positive, and you're kind of able to cash flow the operations, of course. So definitely nothing we see that would necessarily be concerning there. All right, we just wanted to include a quick graph of your future debt service. It looks a little bit wonky, but really, the scale is not that large, so it's not as kind of crazy as it looks. So $2.4 million was the actual debt service expenditures in 2017. That does go down to 2.2 in 2018, and they go up to 2.7 in 2019, and it kind of slowly starts to tick down again. So this is the actual cash outflow that you have to be making on your debt service. So that, of course, assuming no additional debt issuances are issued in this time frame.
Just quickly, can you recap why we're jumping up on 19?
It's the timing of the way the amortization on the payback of the street projects we did in 2017 are coming online.
It wasn't 18 the full impact?
It's 2019.
When the actually principal payments, it was. We were levying in 18, but it's the timing of when you levy versus when you pay the principal and interest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, usually it's a couple year delay on those payments.
From the cap.
And then probably it goes down because of some equipment certificates goes off in 2020 and 21, and so those are equipment certificates that you're.
That could be, I think, one of those. And even just.
Okay, thank you.
So in the past, we included a graph here to compare your tax rate comparison to kind of some neighboring cities, the statewide average. Legal Minnesota City actually doesn't have that data out currently. They are going through sort of the software conversions that wasn't available. So we did have to remove that slide, so we couldn't take a look at the tax rate comparison as we did in the prior year. But we do have taxes per capita comparison. This is looking back to 2016. It's 2017 data for kind of comparison states isn't necessarily out yet, of course. So looking back to 2016 as far as tax rates per capita, we put you up there with obviously some of your neighboring states just to see where you end up. Just over $550 as far as your tax rate per capita. Obviously you can see that they're very comparable to, maybe even, I think Long Lake might be just a tick lower than you guys, otherwise you guys are all pretty much right in with those lowest those cities across there. So, I mean, it's something to keep in mind. Of course, you want to kind of keep an eye on what's going on around you, but at the same time, you want to take it for its worth. You don't want to get too hung up on it. So, it's good to keep an eye on what's going on, be aware of it. But certainly, there are many factors that go into these types of things in different types of cities. So, also not something to get, of course, too hung up on necessarily. And then we have your expenditure comparison. Here again, we'll be looking back to 2016 because that's the most recent data we have. There you are, just over $700. Again, very comparable. Some cities are lower, some are higher, but you're right in there. So, and then we just want to point out a couple other things. GASB, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, which is the sort of governing body that governs governmental accounting, of course, and kind of makes the rules essentially. They're always good stuff. I know you've seen it. Every time I'm here, I feel like I'm telling you about something new that's coming. So these are the upcoming standards that will be in effect. Of course, we kind of have one each year here. OPEB is the bigger one of the three. The middle one I don't think will even affect you, but OPEB standard, which is the other post-employment benefits, that will be in effect next year. And you do already have an OPEB liability in your books with GASB 45, so it's probably been about 6 or 7 years now since you've put that liability on your books. What they're doing is just changing a little bit of the requirements as to how it's measured. They're bringing it a little bit in line with the new pension standards that come out a few years ago. So there is going to be a little bit of differences in maybe the disclosures. And in the past, they said you could kind of amortize the liability onto your books over like a long period rather than clumping it down. They're taking that away. Your OPEB liability is much smaller than your pension one, though. So even though it's going to grow because of this, it's not going to be nearly as dramatic as the pension liability. But that will have to come into play in 2018. So that liability will likely grow a little bit. Fiduciary activities, like I said, I don't think that really affects you. The other item for 2020 now, still looking for a couple years, is leases. Any lease longer than a year is now going to be considered capital, so may impact you a bit where you might have some capital assets if you lease items for longer than a year. But nothing major there really, but just wanted to point those out. The other item there is that the city did receive in 2016 the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. That in order to do that, you have to prepare what we call CAFR, or Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. And what that is it's much longer than what kind of basic requirements are under GAAP and GASB. There's some additional sections, some additional disclosures, some kind of look-back data in the stats tables. And really it's not required, but a lot of cities put together to really show their citizens that they really care about financial information, they want to be as transparent as possible, and want to just put together a really complete financial package. So the city has been doing that for many years. Received their certificate last year, and of course they're going to submit again, and we have no reason to believe that they won't receive that certificate again. I just wanted to point out that they did receive that in 2016 as they continue to kind of come into that financial reporting and information. And I believe that is all I had. So if you have any questions for me?
Lots of information.
I know.
Very short, yeah.
Yeah, I guess the one thing I'd add, I know Michelle touched on the report, is that we did, I thought our results of our general fund, our utilities funds, our general fund, we spent less than what we still spent down dollars, but we spent less than what we budgeted. So I think we did a good job of managing our departmental budgets there. And, budgeted for our utility funds well, even with some of our major infrastructure projects we've done the last several years. So I think we're sitting okay. I'm sitting good. I guess I should be better than okay. So
Just one comment. I know you said our fund balance policy says 50%. I believe it says 45 to 50.
Well, there's a lot of different factors. I think our policy actually says a minimum of 40%.
Yeah.
I think we've used the guideline of trying to stay around
40.
50%.
Okay. All
And
right.
that state auditor says they even go at 35 to 50 of
Yeah.
current year expenditures.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of
Okay.
different,
All right.
I guess, ways to measure it, but I think we've tried to use that general rule of staying around 50%. If you ever get in with that little buffer, that if you go a
Right.
little
Yeah,
below
worst
50,
case
it's
scenario,
Yeah.
that
Right.
it's
Yeah, we did
okay.
recommend 40 to 50. Every year is obviously well there. Your policy is
Right.
So.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Unless there's
Thank you.
any other questions? I don't believe so. So what we do have to do is we have to, I need a motion to receive and accept the audit.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Ms. Mortenson made the motion and Mr. Tschumperlin seconded that to receive and accept the audit. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, Motion passes. So, good job, Brian, as always. Good
Thank you.
job.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good team effort.
So we have no one signed up under persons to be heard, so we move along to our consent agenda items. They consist of approving our work session meeting minutes from May 7th, 2018, approve our regular meeting minutes from May 7th, 2018, approved our closed session meeting minutes from May 7th, 2018, approve our claims, and a resolution to accept the resignation of Paul Stone from the Planning Commission. Are there any that you need to have removed? If not, consent agenda A, B, C, D, and E. Is there a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. Tschumperlin made that motion and was seconded by Ms. Mortenson. Further questions, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 4-0. We don't have any public hearings this evening, so we'll move on to our business items. Our first item is a discussion of prohibiting short-term rentals. Mr. Batty, did you want to start that?
Yes, Madam Mayor, Council. At the last City Council meeting 2 weeks ago, you heard considerable testimony about a proposed ordinance banning short-term rentals. This had also been the subject of 2 Planning Commission public hearings. And although last time at the council it was not a public hearing, still again there was considerable testimony to that effect. In the ensuing discussion among the council members, there was interest in exploring an alternative to a total ban, and that was to ban short-term rentals but to find them in a way which allowed a small group of rentals to continue, and those being specifically those that were operated by owner-occupants. And so the task that staff was given was to draft a second version of the ordinance, and that's what's before you tonight along with the original ordinance. That task, I think, was easier said than done. We spent a good deal of time at the last meeting discussing about how we would determine whether a property was owner-occupied. The convenient way of doing so would have been to rely on the county for homestead purposes, and I think everyone agreed that that was not really going to be a very good source of information. So we spent some time trying to come up with an alternative. Effectively, what's in the ordinance is using the same kinds of criteria that people would use or the city clerk would use if someone were registering to vote. Again, that's subject to a discussion about whether that adequately addresses the issue and whether people could provide information that was not necessarily accurate or get away from that. So those are the 2 drafts in front of you for consideration. You don't have to adopt either one of them, or you can certainly look at another alternative. One of the things that both ordinances have in common is a provision declaring that all short-term rentals are a nuisance. That's language that was borrowed from the Shorewood ordinance. When this first started, Shorewood had adopted an ordinance banning these things, and I think that's what staff used as a template. I would suggest that if you adopt either version of this ordinance tonight, that you modify that language to say that short-term rentals may constitute a nuisance rather than be a nuisance. I think it overstates things to declare all of them as a nuisance. Certainly some of them may have characteristics of a nuisance, but that would be the one suggestion that I would make.
All right. Thank you. Any questions of staff? Otherwise, we'll start with comments, and I'm going to start out. So last time when we were here, we heard a lot of comments and I don't want to say testimony, but from residents, and we had a lot of opposed to VRBOs and some that were for it, and that, as Mr. Batty pointed out, set the stage, and we said, well, let's see what this ordinance would look like if we were to allow a small or a very narrow window of opportunity. As I was reading the new ordinance allowing for people that live in their homes to operate VRBOs, I started getting concerned because, as Mr. Batty says, it's very, very difficult and very hard to write something to make it almost infallible, where people have to prove that they live there. And I don't think we're there. And because of that, I'm opposed to it, because when it says that they can provide a driver's license or they can provide a utility bill, those are easily done and not really living there. So it's like, in order to prove that these people actually reside there and that this is their primary residence, I think it's going to be very, very difficult to prove that. And the other thing I was thinking about is, we were trying to, we understand this one resident in our community has a special situation. And I think we all can identify with her and we can have empathy for her situation. But as a council, it's really hard to create city policy with one individual in our community in mind. And that's why I don't think it's good policy to create an ordinance to try and fit it around one individual. We didn't hear from anybody else in the community that resides in their home and that needs this for income. And quite frankly, she still has options, because you can still rent it out one individual or one, if you will, party per month, because they can rent it, if you will, for a whole month. Whether they stay there the whole month or not, that's up to them, but it can still be done. So I think there's still options out there for her. I just don't want to create an ordinance specifically because of this one individual. And I also looked at this, and when we look at on page 163, it was stating that the purpose of the ordinance, and the purpose of the ordinance is to preserve the residential character of the city's residential districts and preserve property values and reduce land use conflicts. And I don't see, if we allow this for a group of people, that that's going to do the purpose for which we intend this ordinance to serve. So therefore, I think my opinion and the side that I'm leaning towards is to just flat out prohibit them, no exceptions, with the idea that they would have to cease and desist as of December 31st. So I'm back to the original one, but I do really appreciate the efforts that staff put in, and I think it kind of lets us know what options there are and how difficult it would be to enforce this. That's where I'm coming from.
I have a question on point number 4. Yet under short-term rental means the renting of, it talks about who offers for rent their primary residence up to, and then there's a line, it doesn't say number of times per month. I don't understand what that means.
Madam Mayor, Council, it was leaving a blank if the council wished to fill in a number. That was not something that was specifically discussed at the last meeting, but as we kind of looked at this, my sense of it was we were trying to target a group of people who rented out their houses perhaps on an intermittent basis. And so this was simply an opportunity, if the council wished to adopt this ordinance and wished to limit the number of times per year, per month, however often you wanted to insert that. If you don't want, if you adopted this ordinance and don't want that, that line can certainly come out.
And that was under the, so the two ordinances that we had, that would be under the ordinance with the exception
Yes,
of
that's the
owner occupied.
Yes, that was the
Yeah.
new version being
Right.
brought back tonight.
Okay. And I know we had some discussion about that last time and how you would enforce that or how you would determine that. I mean, we're not going to have the police going around on a daily basis determining whether or not these people are renting their residences one time a month or 6 times a month. I mean, that would be really hard to prove.
The only other things that I'd like to say is I agree with Lisa with prohibiting as originally. I see safety being a very large issue. I certainly would not want to be in that situation myself. It had been suggested that we prolong this and wait another year to see how many more problems we have. We already did wait a year. And in that time span, we have seen a number more coming in, and a lot of residents very disappointed and seeing that happen in their neighborhoods. So, and I do like the to implement it December 31st. I think that is only fair to the people that have put their deposits down, and you know, just let them run through the year and then activate it at that point.
The other issue too that I was looking at, and I didn't mention this before, is if we allow the short-term rentals for people that own their properties or live there, for owner-occupied parcels, keep in mind that if we ever want to change it, they would have to be grandfathered in. And that's the other issue, because we have one property owner that's currently doing it, and yes, she may be very responsible, but we don't know if other people would be as responsible as she is. So again, we're trying to make an ordinance for one person. I just don't think that that's going to work. So those properties would be grandfathered in.
I'm done.
In addition to the comments made already, one thing that was discussed, and I just want to kind of reiterate it here, is property values. I've seen some activity on property valuation where, and also I've seen correspondences on this from prospective buyers, that there is some hesitancy to purchase with the unknown that this could happen next door to a property to them. And I think we're starting to see some in price categories where VRBO could economically make sense. We're seeing some hesitancy in some devaluation on properties because of the uncertainty that we're creating by allowing this. And I think by being clear with a ban that this is not allowed, we remove that cloud of uncertainty and hopefully get property values back up so that people can have the peace of mind knowing that if they're going to make $750,000 investment or more, probably more, that they know what they're getting in terms of, and that's true not just for lake properties, but for any property. And that's the essence of zoning, is that you want to know what you're buying into. And I think this strengthens and makes more clear what is zoned, because I think as it's written, we kind of define, we have this section in here that talks about, this basically looks like a hotel, and that's appropriate only for commercial areas, and I stand by that. I believe that's correct. So I think this actually will help our overall tax base in a number of ways, not just for those that are selling, but those around. And that, of course, will always be subject to debate, but I think anytime you can remove uncertainty from any kind of a market, you start to see values go up. So in addition to the things that I've already mentioned. So given that, I'm also inclined to go with the initial proposal that we talked about previously. One more thing on this, I think from an implementation perspective, it just becomes a little more straightforward also for us to implement. So.
Okay. Mr. Tschumperlin?
Something that I'm not only being new with having to make these decisions or render my opinion on, but this part of, and we don't know if Sandy's the only one. I doubt she's the only one, and there may be rentals that go on that, I mean, if I want to go to Europe for 2 weeks with my wife and someone else wants to live in our house for 2 weeks, unless we draw up some type of official document, it really doesn't apply to this. Is that my understanding, in that there wouldn't be any lease agreement, and so there is no short-term rental? Is that a
You could
correct
actually
assumption?
do that.
Well, we're defining short-term rental as anything less than 30 days. So in your example, what you'd be doing is a short-term rental.
But
Except that he
but if
could-
there's not an official lease document, is it still a rental?
Yes, if you're receiving compensation for it.
But, so let me ask something, but he could still do that as long as he didn't rent it out to another party within that same month. Because he could lease it to somebody, let's say for 2 weeks, they could stay for 2 weeks, but they could maybe not stay for 2 weeks or 4 weeks.
Well, you could avoid the definition of short-term rental by renting it for 30 days or more, which is what I think, Mary, you're suggesting. I don't know how you would do that. I mean, to me, if I were trying to avoid the ordinance, I think the risk of that is that someone would take you up on your offer for 30 days and you come back from vacation and find that they were still there.
I understand it's been talked about before, the monitoring and the policing of, if that's the correct term, of the ordinance. Whether it's the original ordinance or whether we did put in a caveat about residents having some other flexibility. Either way, it's going to would boil down to someone reporting.
Sure.
It's just that if we have the resident, some type of caveat in there for the resident, it gives them a freedom of feeling they're not breaking a law. Because this may go on anyway, whether we do it one way or the other. I still would like to have some caveat in there for residents, not just Sandy. I don't believe she's the only one in the city that's doing it. She's probably the only one we heard from.
Right.
And I know it's who stands up and speaks are the ones we hear and listen to, and I'm sure we all have gotten emails, and I've had a couple of calls. I'm sure we've had that. And admittedly, they have tended to be in one direction versus the other. But I would concede or exceed or succeed, whichever the proper, to going with the original one if that is the consensus. I just feel that, not to say it publicly, but I will, that there's a way around any ordinance. So
I think people know that, but
I don't have to advertise. So while I still have my druthers, I would fall back to the original, a complete banning under 30 days. With the caveat it's implemented at the end of the year.
right.
And again, the terminology change of that it's not, they're not all nuisances, that it's
Yeah, that
maybe
it may
a
constitute,
nuisance.
it may constitute.
May
a nuisance,
constitute.
Yeah, I agree. And here's the thing with outright banning them. At any time, let's say next year, whatever, we determine that there are other people other than Sandy in our community that want to do this, then we can take a look at it again without having to grandfather people in. My bigger concern is right now we know only of one. And if we do this, then we may have people coming out of the woodwork saying, oh, they did it, so they get grandfathered in. Whether they did or not, they still may say they did it just so that they get grandfathered in. Whereas this way we say no to all of it, and then at a future date we can always revisit it, and then we don't have to worry about the grandfathering in. That was one of my concerns.
Okay.
Okay. So is there a motion then to pass the original as presented with that modification to state may constitute a nuisance?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Oh, can you hold on, and
No,
implement it? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay,
You want to, second that?
I'll second that.
Okay, and then also it will state implementing, and I think the original one said that, December
Yes.
Yeah.
31st. So
Yes.
we don't have to add it to the motion, but it states that implementation in an effort to minimize the disruption of the adoption of this ordinance, the city shall not take any enforcement actions related to short-term rentals until December 31st, 2018. Having said that, if there's a nuisance, if you will, loud noise, whatever, those actions can still be enforced under our current ordinances.
Yes,
Okay.
as they should
Yes.
be in any event.
Yeah, okay. So with that, all those in favor signify with aye. All those opposed, motion passes 4-0, one is absent.
Madam,
Yeah,
well, just as a technical matter, you'll notice that what's not included in your agenda is a resolution authorizing publication by title and summary. And the reason for that is who knew which version to summarize?
right.
So now that we know the answer to that question, that will be brought back on consent, I suspect, at the next meeting.
Okay, and then, isn't there like a 10-day notice period? When do we notice the new ordinance? Or it doesn't
No.
go into effect for 10 days?
No, the ordinance becomes effective upon adoption, which happened tonight, and publication, although in this case, the enforcement is delayed until the end of the year. The 10 days, I think you're thinking about, is a new statute that became effective last August, which said that cities are supposed to post ordinances online 10 days prior to consideration.
Okay, so we're good.
Yes, we're good.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to our next business. Anything else? Very good. All right, moving on to our next business items. It's deny the variance in CUP for the ground-mounted solar panels at 7091 Halsted Drive. The reason this didn't go on our consent agenda is because it was a 3-2 vote, and had it been put on the consent, it would have just been pulled. And so we're bringing it back. We don't have to have a lot of discussion unless there's more discussion to be had. Otherwise, I'm just looking for a motion to deny the variance and the CUP for the ground-mounted solar panels at 7091 Halsted Drive.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Motion was made by Ms. Mortenson and seconded by Mr. Molitor. Any further questions, discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify with aye. Motion, all those opposed? Okay. Motion passes 4-0 with one absent. Next is a resolution to approve professional services agreement for the 2018 mill and overlay improvements. Mr. Hornby?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. In your packet is memorandum for the 2018 mill and overlay improvement, and I added in pertinent work. As you recall, in the 2018 CIP, there were also some other projects that were identified but came from a different fund than the road fund. So for the mill and overlay project, the roadways that were approved by council for the 2018 were the mill and overlay of Burl Oaks Court, Burl Oaks Drive, Hunter's Court, Pheasant Crossing, and Glacier Court. Other improvements that would be included in this bid package would include the City Hall parking lot. That would be replacing the existing pavement and curb and gutter within the City Hall parking lot. That also actually includes, since we're removing curb and gutter in the pavement, we also have to take care of some of the ADA requirements. So we'll have to look at how the parking lot would be striped and meet the current ADA improvements with that. We had that discussion.
Okay.
Discussion related to parks in the,
Right.
so there would be some sidewalk work along with it.
So does that mean all the sidewalk out front here is covered?
No, we would just take out what we need to get a compliant ramp in.
So just a ramp? Correct.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because I thought there was something that had to be mud jet or something to get any kind of bump out, or is that not the case?
We'll look at the specific panels, but I think what we end up having to do is the sidewalk would be a separate project at a future date. Also included in the improvements is the paving of the gravel driveway to well number 7. That would come from the water fund. And paving the existing aggregate trail within Slow Creek Park. This is from the pedestrian bridge south. There's also a segment of that trail that's coming apart, and Public Works requested that we also take a look at removing some of that bituminous and perhaps doing some subgrade improvements and putting that trail in. well, total length of that trail is 460 feet. There is another portion of this trail that remains gravel going to the north side of the pedestrian bridge to the cul-de-sac to the north.
Mhm.
So that would come in under a different project. The city engineers have put together an estimate for this proposal. The total improvements construction cost is estimated to be about $398,000. The capital improvement plan, that includes the capital improvements for the roadway. What I did to come up to that number was take the $330,000 that was in the CIP, take the indirect costs out, and then that 398 is the total construction value. The indirect cost would be the amount in the proposal. So for design, is proposed on an hourly not to exceed basis in the amount of $24,100. For construction services, they're based on an hourly estimated fee of $27,200. As you know, construction phase services we propose at an estimated fee because there are factors which the contractor, we don't control the contractor. Their scheduling, their means and methods, weather, other unknown conditions that may arise, or we can't account for, so we try to estimate those fees conservatively so that we don't go over those. The total estimated fees are $51,300. There is a resolution in your packet to authorize the work and the proposal with WSB.
Okay. Any questions?
I do have one additional question, Paul, on the parking lot with the sidewalks. And this may be out of scope for the paving and maybe it's for the curb, but one thing I'd like to be able to consider is do we have the option of getting rid of some of the sidewalk on either side so that we're not maintaining it and replace it with curb?
I suppose we could look at that, certainly.
It might be more cost, though.
Just to get, no, I think it'd be cheaper because you just get rid of it and not replace it with more. Like that sidewalk from like, well, not the door, but where the window starts down there. I don't ever see people walking on it. You just end up walking through the parking lot because the space, by the time you park your car on the front end of the car hangs over the sidewalk, and where the hill and the shrubbery is, there's not any room to walk through there. And so if we got rid of it, it's something we wouldn't have to maintain, we wouldn't have to mud jack it, we wouldn't have to do all the maintenance with it, and maybe a similar thing on that side, but it's more prevalent on this side.
We might, but hold on just a second. The only thing I'm thinking is we might need it for safety reasons or for other, I'm not sure, compliant reasons.
Well, that's why I'm asking the question.
Because there's parking, because of the parking there.
But the parking is no different than the parking on the other side.
I know what you're saying, yeah.
That's why I'm asking the question of Paul, if it's feasible.
What we end up doing for ADA is that we'll have to look at, how you would access, typically for ADA, you're gonna have some ADA compliant spots, but
Mhm.
you're not gonna bring a person using those spots outside of those spaces into a drive aisle into a pedestrian ramp. So you're gonna have a pedestrian ramp closer into the building.
Right.
And then those could stay the way they are or be taken out.
Right, but I mean, the way it's set up now, I would envision the ramp cut out to be right by the front door here. You would never take the sidewalk and go down because there's no access off the sidewalk. There's not another ADA ramp on either side of the
No,
building.
there wouldn't be, and this parking lot over here is too steep to get an ADA compliant ramp, or compliant spot in. So
Right.
we're gonna have a greater than 2% transverse slope on it, so the ramp would like to be on this
Where
side.
it currently is possibly.
And also we'll look at the number of spots that are striped in the lot to make sure that we, plan out how many spots we actually need there.
Right, but I'm just asking if we can consider that, subject to if there's a legal reason why we have to have it.
I don't know. I mean.
But if there
just-
isn't, they just don't seem to be utilized, and it just seems to be a source of more expense. If we don't have to do it, it'd be nice just to.
Mayor and council member, understand what you're after, we'll take a look at it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Don't know if it would work
Sure,
or not.
understood.
but
Or if it adds costs, then we might
Yeah.
not have the
Well,
budget for
I
it.
can't imagine, if you take it, if we're gonna replace it at some point.
No, I don't think we're not going to replace it now.
Not planned to, no.
Yeah.
No, but I'm just saying, if we're, I think I heard, though, at some point, we're gonna look at the curb and gutter within the lot.
But from a public works standpoint, they were wanting to look at the whole parking lot and the sidewalk, but because of that construction value, it's
Right.
likely that's going to be split into two projects.
Right.
So the sidewalk would be a future.
So maybe we could replace or eliminate the sidewalk at that time.
Right, but my
Yeah.
point in bringing it up now is
Right.
that you have to look at the project in its entirety, even though we're doing it two
Sure.
separate phases, that if we're going to put asphalt in and we're putting it up against a curb that's tied to a sidewalk that's going to be removed, then you wouldn't want to, you'd want to take the
Exactly.
sidewalk out.
And so with staff, we'll take a look at that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. My only question, Mr. Hornby, is, so we have a couple different things going on. We have road construction, we have roads, then we have the Slow Creek Park trail, or Slow Creek Park Trail, and then we have the parking lot. They're all these things are coming from 3 different funds. So with that, we're authorizing a payment of 51.3, but how is that being divided up? Because not only is the, we have to be sure that all of these things, the designing of it as well as the construction oversight is all broken out to the appropriate.
The way I'd recommend that we handle that is we come through with the estimated cost. You can determine the indirect cost share by percentage, or you could do that on the construction value. So each one of these would be bid in a separate schedule,
Okay,
so that if the cost comes in higher than anticipated, you can eliminate that schedule.
okay, all right.
You're saying even just as far as charging amount, I mean, it might be 70% here, 20%.
Correct. That's what-
you're
That's,
saying.
I just want to get at that.
Yes,
One
we
is
just-
coming from our park dedication funds, one is coming from the 50,000 that we've budgeted for, and the other one is coming from our 330,000 road improvement fund.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure that the 51,000 is then divided up and allocated correctly to those funds.
And I would suggest doing that by either the as-bid price or the estimated cost, and breaking
Okay.
those indirect costs to each particular budget.
All right.
accordingly.
So would these projects start within, what's the time frame?
Well, I plan to have a design team starting tomorrow.
Okay.
All right, okay, good questions. Anything else? Otherwise, is there a motion to approve professional services for the 2018 mill and overlay improvements, which is CP 02-18?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Administrative items, we'll start with staff reports. Mr. Barone.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. I actually have 5 items, and one's quite long, so I'm going to save that one for the last. Just a few things to note. The city of Minnetonka Beach did pull out of the Mound Fire District, I guess for lack of a better phrase, fire consortium. They're going to go with the Long Lake Fire Department. They made that decision at their one and only meeting in May about a week ago. And so I'm sure we'll be having to address that. I'm sure there'll be some change in how we get our fire services as far as cost, but I don't necessarily think they will go up. It's going to hurt a little. It's going to be mean. We may have to adjust budgets and look at cost-cutting things, but between that and a few other things, I hope we should be whole. I don't think it'll be a huge impact, but we're going to take a look at it. We'll keep you posted on that. I did want to kind of throw out some thanks to city staff. We've had, over the last 2 weekends, kind of our 2 big events for the calendar year. We had the cleanup day on Saturday, May 12th, and then we had Trista Day on Saturday, May 19th, just 2 days ago. I want to thank Dawn and Angie and anybody else, along with the public works staff, for all their work towards the Saturday, May 12th. We were open from 8 to 3, and I guess business was booming. We had huge long lines for people wanting to get rid of stuff. A number of times people would come back 2 or 3 times with another car full or a van full of stuff. I said to Gary before that, because I don't think the year before, I think we had okay weather. I know Trista Day a year ago was bad, but I think the weather for this was pretty good a year ago. And I said, well, why don't you get a counter and count the people? So if we have to, because we're open from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. I said, maybe we can make it 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. I said, well, I think that was the jinx of all jinxes, because he said we were so crowded and so busy. They had to go at a certain point in line and say, you're it, you're the last one. They had turned people away. So
Wow.
it was past 3. So it's a good thing. A lot of people, you don't have to live in Minnetrista to use it. It was a good thing because we get this stuff to go to the right place instead of just getting dumped in our ditch. So or some other ditch in some other city, so.
Well, should we consider, do we do two?
We used to do
We
two.
used to do two.
And the
Maybe-
fall one
Fall
was
one wasn't
terrible.
very well attended.
Yeah.
Even in its good days, it was
Well,
bad.
maybe we want to rethink that, I don't
Yeah,
know.
don't-
Anyway.
Don't say that too
Yeah,
loud around
okay.
here.
Yeah,
so-
Yeah.
I'd say wait to see if this was an anomaly
Yeah.
this year. I mean, it was probably 20% higher than, if you look back
Yeah.
in the last few years,
Yeah.
it's the same, and then this year.
Which is why I said,
Okay.
start counting,
All right.
especially getting near the end. And then for Trista, I don't know if Paul wants to say anything else, but we had, I wouldn't say great weather, we had pretty good weather, at least it didn't rain on us, and I thought all the events went well, so thanks to Amy and Cassandra and all the city staff, including especially the public safety staff and Pam for lining up the pig races after a year hiatus. So I thought it was a great event. I think they both went really well.
Do we know what the attendance was in that?
No,
Just a guess? No.
I mean, the giving away hot dogs is not a real.
Yeah, it's not.
Because people come multiple times. We've heard some really cool stories over the last few years about, like, somebody brought their birthday party here, they figured they'd just have lunch here. Things like that, so that's not a real good way to monitor attendance, but I don't know, Paul, if it was a good turnout. I mean,
I thought it was.
2 years ago was really super weather, but,
Maybe you should count cars.
or you can count the tickets you give the cars for parking illegal.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
All right.
One other item before I get to my big one. I think most people heard Mr. David Opine come to City Hall a month or so ago,
March.
talking about his
Yeah.
fan. I just wanted to give you an update on that. So we did have a chance finally. I know he's come and he's emailed, but we've never really sat down with him. So we invited him to come in and give his story again to us face to face on Wednesday, May 8th. And I told him at the time that our goal is to talk with his neighbor with the fan, and that's set up for this week. And so he wrote another kind of, this is driving me crazy and I don't blame him, kind of email to council and staff a week or so ago. And I told him, hey, like we told you at the meeting we had, I'm still lining up the meeting with actually the name of the party is the Opogs. Both their last names start with O, that's a little unusual. But they're both coming in on Wednesday. And he did, Mr. Opheim, send me an email, and sent everybody else an email. On Thursday of last week, he says, I finally did get a text message response from the neighbor indicating a willingness to discuss the matter next week. I don't know what that means, so hopefully it's a move in the right direction, but we'll, like I said, we'll be hearing the OPOGs out on Wednesday, so. And then my final item, this is kind of a long one, so bear with me. Ultimately, council, what I hope to do is bring something back for your approval because of the dollar amount that's involved here at the next city council meeting. But I wanted to relate to you a situation that's been going on since May of 2006. That predates pretty much most people on this counter, and I'm sure everybody on that side. So not quite Brian. So this is 2 city managers ago, 2 engineers ago, and 2 mayors ago. So this is how old this problem is. It involves a resident named Harry Stillwell. There was a Maple Crest Street and utility project improvement that took place in that time frame, and there was a legal document, an agreement in exchange for granting an easement through his property. And the city promised to pave his auxiliary driveway with road quality, bituminous preparation, and drainage functionality with the road project. And so there's been a number of attempts to try to satisfy that requirement. He was asked to sign a document, which he did not do because he didn't like the outcome of the paved driveway. He had a rather colorful email that he sent to me. The other day I asked him just to kind of summarize in his own words. I have a file that I inherited from Mr. Funk, but there's a number of things in there that I will include in a packet. But bottom line, what we're getting to is he would like to get his chunk of his driveway that was promised to be put back in the condition it was before this street and utility project was undergone to his satisfaction. It's never satisfied him. They've tried a couple different ways, like a fog seal at one point in time, and they did some rough patching, and he was never satisfied, never signed the document. He contacted me, what was it, maybe about a year and a half ago, roughly?
Yeah.
And we couldn't get to it last year for a number of different reasons. But he called again this year, and so we said, we're going to get this thing done. So I spoke to him in March. I said, Harry, if you really want to get this done, and you don't want city crews to do it, which he doesn't want to do, because he's tired basically of dealing with us. I said, get 3 quotes like we normally do, and send those in to me. So he's done that. At least there's 2 that were really close. They're essentially $3,700. And so I'm only authorized to spend $2,500. And we actually did at one point in time offer, we'll give you $2,500 and you can walk away. But, you know, he feels like he's in the right and he would like to get this thing done to his satisfaction. And so we've even thought about including it in our bid that you talked about earlier tonight. But when I talked with Paul, and I think he could confirm this for me, his guess, because Paul went out there and looked at it in March as well, his guess was going to be the $3,000 to $3,300 for that, and that's because we can get kind of a volume price on the bituminous versus what he can get on his own. And so I think his quotes are legit.
They
They're
look
expensive compared to a little more expensive than what we have, but I think they're legit. So he was unable to make it tonight. Again, I think there's a lot of stuff going on with schools that he said he had some commitment that he couldn't get out of. But I told him I would bring this up. I said it's strictly up to the council to decide to go for it or not. I would let him know what what your flavor is or what your decision is. But again, I think to do this properly, I would feel better about bringing this back at the next council with all the background information, data, to get you to hopefully vote for this. But I want to at least lay it out for you tonight, so it wasn't a big surprise, like what is this, when you get your packet next time. So I don't know if people are okay with that proposition. Finally get this off the books and be done with it.
I have one question.
Sure.
For you. So he's gotten 3 bids.
Yep.
So obviously these are firms he's selected.
Yeah. Well, we've seen the same for
Sure,
balls.
that's fine.
They're legit.
I guess where I'm going with this is, if we go down this path, my concern is I want to make sure that he signs off.
Oh, absolutely, and I
Oh,
think
yeah.
we would structure it so we would reimburse him
Okay.
for the money,
Okay,
and it's based on his signature on a document,
okay,
and then we would cut him a check with the amount on, not to exceed whatever his bid price is. So
okay,
if he wants to do something else extra fancy,
right,
that's on him. So,
right.
yeah, we would not just, fill him out here, I'm not doing that, so.
No, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure.
But yeah, absolutely.
So that this really does die.
Well, that's our concern. And I said, I want to get this done with. This is way too many mayors, city administrators, and engineers ago to keep talking about it.
Right.
So with that, I will contact him tomorrow, tell him our game plan, and then you'll see it hopefully on consent at the next city council agenda. So, like I said, it's a little longer than most of my other rants, but I want to make sure you understood it. So that's all I have, I think, Cassandra.
Okay. Ms. Tabor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, member of the council, or members of the council. I just wanted to make you aware of a grant that we will be receiving this summer at some point. Mike had located a grant through Centerpoint Energy that we could apply for, reached out to Chief Falls and myself to work together to see what we could do to possibly qualify for that. Paul had previously budgeted to replace some AEDs that were needed, and I believe there was a piece of it that had to do with pediatrics as well. Paul, if you want to jump in at all. And so we submitted to Centerpoint. Paul got a bid or a quote. I submitted to Centerpoint what impact it would have on our community, what it would do for our city as well to have these additional resources because of this money. And we submitted at the end of May, and we just found, or in the middle of May, and we just found out here at the end of May that we received it. So we had requested $2,500, we were awarded $2,000. And the plan is, one of the things that they were looking for is cities who were willing to have them come out and actually present the check. So obviously there's a PR opportunity
Sure,
for them
yeah.
as well, which is fantastic. And so what's happening right now is for those of us who are being awarded any form of this grant, they're coordinating times as to when they would come out and do those presentations. So it'll either be at a council meeting, it may be a daytime event that's at the PD. It really just depends on how they're juggling the other recipients as well and when we can get people together for what. So it's $2,000 outside of our planned budget for AEDs for this coming year. So it's a nice grant. So.
Yeah, nice, great, good job. And of course, we'll let them come out and give us a check.
They can sing a song if they want for $2,000.
Very good. All right.
Madam Mayor, I just need someone to attend the May 29th Planning Commission meeting at Council Liaison.
Which is Tuesday, because Monday is the holiday. I cannot attend that meeting.
I can do it.
You can do it?
I'll do it.
Great.
Okay.
I will go to the June one. So that's great. Thank you, John. All right. Anybody else? Staff reports? Otherwise, we'll move on to council reports. I'll go first real quick. Attended the Northwest League on May 9th. Dave Thill with Hennepin County Environmental Services was our speaker, told us all about these wonderful, really cool things that you can do online with land surveys and so on. I won't go into details, a lot of details, but you can actually go on their website and see it for yourself under the Environmental Services Department. Also attended on May 10th the West Tonka Community and Commerce meeting. The speaker was from he was the CEO from the Ridgeview Hospital or Clinics. Very interesting. And then I attended the May 17th We Can Open House. They've expanded, and of course they showed off all of their facilities, and you got to meet their staff and also what they do. Find out all of the things that they provide, what kind of services. And on the 16th, Pam and myself met with staff and a resident from, it was Preserve Boulevard, and it was in regards to the junk property at the corner of Preserve Boulevard and Deer Creek Road. And unfortunately, even though we've been monitoring it and looking into it, and we've sent some letters, at this point we're kind of at the end of what we can do at this point. There were a couple of suggestions made. One, maybe we could plant some trees in the boulevard to shield or to screen the mess or the junk. And the other suggestion was to look at our zoning to see if we could somehow, again, we don't want to prohibit a lot of, we want to be careful what we prohibit, but prohibit some type of have something, I'm not sure, maybe number of vehicles or number of junk vehicles, I'm not sure. It would not help this property or this situation, but it may deter people in the future from doing things like this. So I don't know if we want to talk about that at a work session sometime to see if we want to take a look at that. We don't need to do it tonight. I just wanted to bring it up. So that would be kind of a work session discussion. We can go into more detail. And the other thing is possibly using some of our tree preservation, our environmental preservation funds to plant some trees along the boulevard. It would be in the city right-of-way. Maybe that can also be a discussion too. Then with that, we also talked about staff sending a letter to the people on Preserve Boulevard, letting them know what we've done to date and what we can do and what we can't do, and maybe what the next steps would be. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, we certainly could. And we spent a lot of time talking with these neighbors and trying to hear what it is that's going on in that area. And the police have been taking a look at it, and we just can't find a way for them to, this property owner to essentially clean up his property. I mean, that he has a right to do what he's doing. We're not finding anything that he's doing illegal. We're kind of reiterating the ordinances to him, see what he says, but so far, we're hitting some dead ends here.
So we'll bring that back to a future work session. I attended Trista Day, wonderful event. Thank you, Ms. Mortenson, for the pig races, and thank you, Paul and your staff at the police department for all that they do. It was a wonderful event. A lot of people that everybody I spoke to actually just loves the event. They think it's great, so good thing. And tomorrow we have our public safety meeting, I believe. We'll be attending that. And then just another announcement, don't forget about the bus tour, which is June 12th. If you haven't done it, please join us. It's in the evening. We depart at City Hall at 6 o'clock. Again, that's a Tuesday evening, June 12th, and we already have scouted out the bus tour. I do need to talk with you, Paul, regarding some closed roads and some things like that, but I'll talk to you about that after the meeting. So anyway, that's all I have.
Great. Trista Day, it was a lot of fun, and I think the kids and parents had a really good time. I am in the process of writing thank you notes to all the sponsors, and hopefully they will all sponsor again next year. And I think that's it.
Yeah. I attended the Trista Days as well, and actually set up a booth for the LMCD. So we had a bunch of informational material, talked to a number of people about what the LMCD does and general education. So it was where we were making this effort across all the communities within the area. This year is the 50th anniversary of the LMCD. So we were one of the first, coincidentally, the same day as Wyzetta's activities. So we kind of had both things going on that day. Theirs was a little bit more environmentally focused, but nonetheless, whenever you get people's attention, it still helps. On the LMCD, we have our meeting this week. There's going to be a public hearing this week. This is not in Minnetrista, but is not far from us. Seton Channel. There is a number of dock slips that were recently constructed, expanded, just right in the channel. And the owner is now requesting to make 4 of those dock slips transient slips, meaning they're not rented out to one individual. They're used for boat traffic in and out, primarily to serve back channel brewing. And so there'll be a public hearing on that matter on Wednesday. And I think there was one other minor item that did impact the city of Minnetrista. It was a dock request from Palmer Point, but it was very minor. So.
Good. Thank you. And I know that takes a lot of time, the LMCD, I know that. So, yeah. So thank you. Mr. Tschumperlin.
2 things. One is housekeeping, I guess. On the agenda memo, which I assume is kind of a standard printout, under Ms. Mortenson, Pioneer Sarah Creek Watershed alternate is still listed there. That should be moved to.
Thank you.
To Ms. Bruce.
Ms. Bruce, yes. Thank
and
you.
I did attend my first meeting with the Pioneer Sarah Creek, and the only thing was, and it's been mentioned before, is we officially voted and put the South Whaletail alum treatment
okay.
on their CIP for 2020,
Right.
which now makes it official and makes it available for grants and
Right.
whatever. I don't know yet how that process works,
Yeah.
but that's what we voted
Yeah.
for. So.
Well, and that's good to know, because we should start thinking about that for our stormwater fund and budget, if it's coming up in 2020, or if I'm not sure if that's the date, that's the year they're thinking of doing it.
That's the year we listed it at.
Okay.
But it was already listed originally as 2017 as well.
Right. So we just need to, and I'll talk to you about it,
Okay.
because to make sure that we do want to do those kind of things, and we haven't had any, or not very many projects in the Pioneer Sarah area, so this would be a nice project to do, but it's expensive, so we have to take a look at that and see how we're going to budget for
Right,
it.
it's still listed at 300,000, of which the commission would cover 25% only, so 75.
And they're going to be looking for grants.
Correct.
And then I'm sure the LCCMR grants, or else the Clean Water funding grants. Plus, we also have a really good third partner, and that would be Three Rivers Park District.
Right.
So they would also be funding some of that. So we'll want to look at all of the funding options and opportunities.
Right.
So, yep.
Okay.
Yep. Good. Thank you. Okay. With that,
We're good.
we're good. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion was made by Ms. Mortenson and seconded by Mr. Molitor. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 4-0. Thank you. Not too bad.
Ooh.
Yeah.